Okay, sorry, Stephen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this morning's meeting of the West Berkshire Licensing Subcommittee. Before I proceed, can I just ask that anybody attending virtually, can you hear the proceedings?
Yes.
Okay, any other? Is that the only person? Okay, thanks, Philippa. Before I obviously start formally, can I just politely ask everyone to switch their telephones to silent, aircraft mode, or switch off appropriately. I would like to confirm that this application this morning would be the hearing for the Newbury Premier at 3 Monument Close, Washcommon, or Essex Street, Washcommon, Newbury. I am Councillor Phil Barnett. I'm supported this morning at subcommittee by Councillor Paul Dick to my right and Councillor Billy Drummond to my left. Councillor Clive Taylor is the reserve. I'm also supported by the legal advisor Thea Nolly to my right and Ben Ryan to my left, who will obviously maintain a record of the proceedings. Stephen Chard at the rear is the Zoom host. I believe we've also got a new licensing officer, Crystal. I'm not certain your surname, sorry, Crystal. Pleased to meet you and pleased for you to come and listen to the proceedings. Please note that the meeting is webcast and recorded. Parties should therefore be mindful of this and bear this in mind in the terms of the information shared during this hearing. I will set out in order in which people will be asked to speak. If at the appropriate point anyone wishes to ask questions, please raise your hand. If we need to adjourn the meeting at any point, I will adjourn and all parties will be advised of a revised time and date for the revised meeting. If we hear the evacuation alarm this morning, we must leave the building immediately. Please proceed via a safe emergency exit route, which will be shown to you by our trained officers, and then follow any instructions given by them. The assembly point is at the car park in the Dolphin Public House, which I think most people will be aware is just outside the other side of the entrance to the part of the building. Anyone who wishing assistance should notify the officers, but of course if lockdown alarms sounds, we will remain seated until we have instructions from officers. We will adjourn the meeting until such a time it is safe to proceed. At this point, does anyone have any questions about the way the meeting will be conducted? No, everybody's happy. Okay. And that also for Philippa, you're happy with everything so far?
Yes, yeah. Well done, Chair. Yes, thank you.
Right, I now move on to the next point, and I firstly apologise if I mispronounce your name. It's not the easiest name to identify, but can I confirm that the applicant, Mr. Thyer Vanathan and Thyer Aragara, is in attendance, and are you the individual wishing to speak?
I'll be doing the speaking.
Okay, so you're going to speak, you're going to use the 10 minutes
Yes.
as the applicant.
Yes.
And your name is, sir?
So it's Robert Jordan, PR Retail.
Okay.
They've just asked us to help them out today.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I also confirm, but we believe it's not the case, that David McTurk is attending via Zoom?
He hasn't joined us, Chairman.
Okay, right. I think we need to look very closely at whether he does attend at some stage. We haven't been notified he was not attending. We were expecting him to attend, but via Zoom. Okay. And obviously, I can confirm that the ward member is present because I'm aware that Councillor David Marsh is sat round the table. Welcome, David. Okay, all other objections submitted in writing will be taken in consideration by the panel when they make their determination on this matter. I will now go on to explain how the proceedings are to be conducted. The council's licensing officer, Philippa Heath, which we have already identified is on Zoom, will introduce the application, after which the calling parties will take place in the following order: representations by the applicant, representation by the objectors if the objector is present, representation by the ward member, and then summing up by the applicant. Remember, each group has 10 minutes in which to make their case, and this should be taken into account with the following licensing acts following the four objectives. And the objectives are as follows: the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. Ben Ryan will be timing the 10 minutes and will notify you on each presentation 1 minute before the end of the 10 minutes. Once all representations have been made and all questions asked, we will close the meeting. After this, the members will meet privately and make a decision. A written decision notice will be issued to interested parties setting out the verdict as soon as possible. But in any event, it will be within 5 working days of this hearing. At this point, you're continuing to hear me okay, Philippa?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. No other people joined? Okay. I would like to take this opportunity to remind all parties present that this is a public meeting and the meeting will be webcast on YouTube. It is therefore necessary to remind all attendees again that they are in a public forum and ask participants to bear this in mind in terms of anything you might have said during this hearing. I'm now going to ask for a declaration of interest. Firstly, from the chairman, myself, I am also a member of Newbury Town Council, and obviously one of the objectors' presentations in writing was from another member of the Town Council. I look upon it as a non-pecuniary interest because I'm not very much associated with this individual, and therefore I have no direct link other than in a town council with this particular person, Meg Thomas. Looking around the table, Councillor Billy Drummond.
Yeah, I know Mr. David Turk, which I believe I'll have to withdraw on the grounds of predetermination. Also know Councillor Meg Thomas and who's that? Marine Penn.
Okay.
I don't believe this will be an
So you feel that this is a peculiarly interest and you feel that you have to withdraw from this panel?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Chairman.
Can I therefore invite Councillor Clive Taylor to take that third position on the panel this morning? Are you happy to accept, Councillor Taylor? And I take note of your concerns, Councillor Drummond, and if you wish to withdraw now, you're welcome to withdraw.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Continuing on with the proceedings, at this particular point, we understand that the applicant would like to make an application for the introduction of new material, which was served late, so I'm led to believe. The subcommittee has not seen this material, and according to regulations, all parties need to agree for any new material to be introduced at this hearing. Okay, so at this particular point, and obviously looking at you as the applicant on behalf of your representatives, we as members and every other person within this hearing needs to make a formal acceptance to proceed on those lines. If it's not 100%, then we proceed on the original application and not the amended application. So at this particular point, I will ask members of the panel plus other members around the table to, and obviously the licensing officer on Zoom, to either agree or not agree to this particular new material being submitted to this panel. So firstly, can I look at the sorry. Okay, all right. Okay, so before we take the vote, we need you to just make this formal application.
Yes, we sent in supporting documents over a week ago, which is our normal procedure that we do. They don't seem to have found a way to the other parties or to the committee, but we sent them in as supporting documents, that's all. It's what we normally do. And it obviously hasn't got to where it should have got, but it was over a week ago that we sent them in. And we did ask, do we need to send copies to the other parties because we haven't got any emails, or whether the council would do it. So didn't really clear about what was going on there, but we are where we are. So that's
okay.
So they're just really training material, really, to give you a gist of the training of staff, really.
Okay, well, thanks for that explanation. The issue is that we need to make a decision on whether we're prepared to then look, suspend and then reconvene after we've actually looked at the documentation. So firstly, I'm going to ask my fellow subcommittee members.
Chairman, apologies, I didn't catch your eye. Just for the record, I have no, it's my fault. I have no connection with anybody connected in any way with this hearing, so I'm perfectly happy that I am.
Sorry, Paul. I did actually look round initially at both of you, but you weren't actually making any distinction.
I didn't catch your eye. It's my fault.
Sorry.
Anyway, that for the record, that's the case. And secondly, as regards the application, and what I've heard, I'm quite content to hear it.
That's the same with yourself.
Yeah, I mean,
Clive.
yes, no, I have no, firstly, I have no declarations of interest in them, and I'm happy that these submissions aren't considered by this committee.
David?
Well, I'm not sure I have a say in it, do I, Chair? But if I do, I'm perfectly happy as well. Seems reasonable. I don't think I have a say in the matter, but if I do, I'm perfectly happy for them to submit late material. It seems reasonable.
In regarding the vested interest.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Okay. Thanks very much. That's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Philippa, can you, hopefully you still hear me, and I'm looking for your decision on this particular extra.
Yes, yes. Sorry, the internet's dipping in and out here where I am, but yes, that's absolutely fine with me. No problem.
Thank you very much. In view of that 100% acceptance, we will then suspend for. Sorry. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. 5 minutes to look at the documentation, and then we reconvene. Okay.
Chairman, can I ask a question, make a point really, not to slow this down because we're already slow, but I'm a bit concerned about future applications. There's some doubt about where this material, extra material went and why we didn't, it wasn't, there seems to be some confusion. So I think that it would be useful if there was a conversation between the applicant and the council officer for future such things. So there's clarity about whether we got it, whether we didn't, whether it was timely, whether it was not. Doesn't affect today because we agreed to listen to it anyway. It's for future
I
hearings.
think, Paul, it's a valid point. Bearing in mind, of course, the document did go out some few days ago because obviously it's got to go to the relevant parties and taken in consideration the problem with the post. We will just leave this room and we will return in 5 minutes. Okay. Right, welcome back. We are now going to reconvene. We've obviously looked at the documentation, and I'll just quickly ask the ward member, you've seen the extra documentation? David? Yeah, okay.
Yes, Chair.
Philippa? You're back on?
I'm back on, yes.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, right, cheers. I just mentioned round the table, it's now 35 minutes past the official start of the proceedings, and we are going to continue on, but it looks as if the objector is not come online and obviously not in the room. So we've decided that we will continue without the objector. Bearing in mind, of course, there is a written representation which we will be considering in our deliberations as well. Okay. Right, continuing on, I'm now going to ask the licensing officer, Philippa Heath, to proceed with the introduction of the application. So it's over to you, Philippa.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me? Yeah, apologies for not coming in today. We had a bit of flooding here and I had to turn the car around and come back home. So anyway, okay, right. So now I'll introduce the application. On the 19th of September 2023, the Licensing Authority received an application for a new premises licence from Mr. Thea Garager, I hope I pronounced that correctly, of England Retails Limited. The application was made under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 in respect of Newbury Premier, 3 Monument Close, Essex Street, Newbury, and recorded on the Council's licensing database under 22643. A copy of the application, including a location map and plan, is attached as Appendix 1, Plans 2, and the DPS details are noticed on Appendix 3. The application seeks a premises licence to permit the following licensable activities: supply of alcohol Monday to Thursday, 0600 to 23, off sales only, and Friday and Saturday, 0600 to midnight, off sales only. I confirm that the application was made in accordance with the Act, and responsible authorities, ward members and parish council were notified of the application by email on the 20th September. The application was advertised in accordance with regulations, and the 28-day consultation period ran from the 20th September to the 17th of October. The blue notice was on public display at the premises, and photos of the notice were sent in by the applicant and checked by an officer from the Public Protection Partnership. The advert was also placed in Newbury Weekly News in accordance with protocol. During the consultation period, 12 valid representations were received from local residents who raised objections against the application. They believe that by granting the licence in its prescribed form, it could undermine one or more of the licensing objectives, namely prevention of public nuisance, public safety and crime and disorder. Members can see these representations attached to Appendices 4. It was noted that on record that a further 2 reps were received during the consultation period, but were not considered to be valid as they were not made under or against any of the 4 licensing objectives. There were no concerns made from the 9 responsible authorities, i.e. the police trading standards and so on, and as a result, all 9 submitted a no objection response. It's noted in the report that the applicant offered up conditions in support of the application, and several further conditions were agreed between Thames Valley Police and the applicant. These are shown in Appendix 5, and if the licence is granted in its prescribed form, these will form part of the operating schedule. Now, obviously, there's the other conditions which were mentioned today, to take into account. Right, so a bit about the premises itself. 3 Monument Close is a ground floor unit situated in Retail Parade in Essex Street in Newbury. The property comprises of main retail space, storage, a garage at the rear and parking for customers. The unit was once a McCall's retail shop, which closed when they were bought up by Morrison's, who closed many of its stores as part of their conversion plan. But while it was open, council records show that they did have a licence to sell alcohol from 0600 to 1800. Occupiers on the same parade include the Co-op, which are licensed to sell alcohol from 0700 to 2200 hours off the premises only. And there are other businesses, 2 food takeaways, a bookmaker, hairdressers, and a vape shop. As relevant reps were made, members must determine this application that as the reps were made in relation to the licensing objectives, and the members must determine the likely effect of the grant of the premises license on the promotion of the licensing objectives. Members must give regard to the promotion of the 4 licensing objectives, which Chair has already read out. And when summing up, members are asked to consider taking into account the written representations and any oral ones, while having due regard to the licensing objectives and whether the application should be granted or rejected. The options available to members are set out on the front page of the report, and if members are minded to include any extra conditions or change some of the conditions offered up by the applicant, they will need to provide reasons for doing so when they make their decision and record them in the decision notice. Further regard should be added to the statutory guidance under section 182 of the Act and the Council's own statement of licensing policy. This concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Philippa. Question from members? No? You're right, okay. Right, Clive.
Raise one. I probably don't really need to ask this, but it's just something I've just noticed. There is a response from a Newbury town councillor. Can I just clarify that that's a response from them as an individual? Because I can see that Newbury, it actually says in the report, Newbury Parish Council, I'm sure they're supposed to read Newbury Town Council were consulted. I just want to be clear that they didn't actually respond.
Well, can I just respond to that? I am actually a member of Newbury Town Council, and likewise, so's the ward member. It was considered in a planning and highways committee, a licensing application, and I obviously can't recall what the decision was and what the information was passed by the chief executive. But normally, a sort of decision of the consultation, because obviously it's just a consultation of the town council, would have been passed obviously back to West Berks Council. So I can't call, but you're actually spot on. I picked that up. It's Newbury Town Council, not Newbury Parish Council. Okay, thank you. Looking round at you, Robert, the applicant, any questions for Philippa at all?
No.
Can I ask her a question?
Technically, yeah.
When you mentioned the other premises, I didn't hear you mention the pub. Is that right? Could you just confirm that there's a pub 3 doors away from the premises? And I'm asking really because do you consider that that's not relevant to the application? It's only in relation to the retail shops that neighbour it.
It's just it's sort of a bit of background information for members to see what's in the parade. Really, you know, the applicant is applying for an off license basically, so, and with the hours, you know, they're asking for particular hours. So we make reference to similar type of businesses in the area, not so much a pub, but I wasn't aware of because I'm not familiar with the area, you see. So I've just noted what was in the parade, just to be helpful for members when they make their decision.
Okay, well, thank you. But just to be further helpful for members, there's a pub 3 doors away from the premises. Thank you.
I mean, from the point of view of me in knowing the geographical area as well as the ward member, it's a relevant point, but I just like to point out to the ward member, we are obliged technically, like planning terms, only to question issues which have been mentioned in relationship to the presentation. So you did raise a relevant point, but it wasn't pointed out by Philip at the time. That's all I might make.
Thank you, Chair.
Comment. Okay, right. If we can then move on to the next stage, which of course would be your presentation, Robert, and presumably you are doing the presentation on behalf of your clients, and you've now got your 10 minutes to give that presentation.
Yes, thanks. Yes. So I haven't got to go through the training program. Training programs have been read, so I won't repeat what was in there. Obviously, no responsible authorities made representation. Refer to guidance 182/1015, which you know anyway. Shops, stores and supermarkets would normally be free to provide sale of alcohol for consumption off the premises any times when the retail outlet is open for shopping, unless there are good reasons based on the licensing objectives restricting those hours. So that will be for the committee to decide whether there are good reasons or not. Main objections seem to relate to the lack of a coffee shop and the co-op being there already. But some of the points mentioned can't relate to this premises because it's not actually open yet. So we think it's mainly speculative. It might happen, it could happen, as a lot of it says. So we think it's speculative. There's always a review process if there were any complaints. And as regards crime disorder, the police have asked for some conditions, and those conditions have been agreed, so they seem happy. So I think due regard has to be paid under that, under guidance 182. Environmental health haven't made any representation on public nuisance, which sometimes they do. Environmental health. We feel to impose conditions to prevent a harm, it must be self-evident a harm will occur. We don't see the evidence that a harm will occur with this application. So I think the training program is the gist of how the shop's going to be run. So I think that's, I think you've got, well, I know you've got some experience, some 12 years experience and 3 years experience. This is Thursday. Director of the company, you've got some 12 years experience working full-time in similar type of shop, and £100,000 investment I think has been made, something like that, quite a bit anyway, quite a lot. Premier are part of Booker, so they give advice on the layout of the plan due to their experience, and I think most of the stock will come from Booker. Yeah, so most of the stock will come from Booker, and you've got 3 years experience as a DPS. Yeah, so there's that experience, and you know about how to run a shop, and a big investment being made. I don't think I want to say any more. Yeah, I mean, hopefully this training tackles most of the issues. I mean, they say like I can see other shops are closing at 10 p.m. I note that. But you've got experience of running shops, and you don't foresee you'll be selling any street drinkers. And if there's any issues with existing shops, I don't think that should really be taken under the regulations to automatically think these same problems would occur. If there were problems with existing shops, I'm sure the police and environment would have looked into if there had been any issues with the existing off sales, but there doesn't seem to be any issues with the existing shops. I don't think I want to say too much more really. I think there's the training program, and hopefully that covers it all.
Thank you very much. You're well in within your 10 minutes. I suspect there's probably only about 5 or 6. Is that correct, Ben? Okay. Members, question, Paul?
Please. So let's talk about the appendix, which came from the police, which has been agreed. Was that difficult for you to agree? Perhaps that wasn't clear. So they've been accepted. There's 2 pages of them. So they're now part of the application. My simple question was it difficult to accept those? Okay. 2 other quick questions, Chairman, if that's okay.
Certainly, carry on.
Thank you. What do you expect the FTE to be a full-time equivalent staffing? How many people will you employ on that premise?
All the time is 2 staffs in the.
Yeah, no, but altogether. So if this was granted in a year's time, I said, show me a list of people who work there. How many people would you expect to be on the list?
7 people.
Pardon?
You mean that premier? Oh, that.
Yes.
Yeah.
How many people over time will be working there? 2, you're saying 2 on a normal basis, but it won't be the same 2 every day, will it?
No.
So how many people will be in that group who work there? It's a simple question, I think.
4 people.
4 people. Okay, and they're all full-time, or are they part-time, or a mixture of full and part?
3 is full-time, is 1
Okay.
part.
So that the reason for that question is simply that the training program should be easy to implement. The more we all know things go wrong when people forget their training. So if it's a small group, then the training should be easy to maintain. And lastly, you're not responsible for what happens in the street. I fully understand that. But can you just be clear about the CCTV coverage at the front of the store for me? It made simple question.
It's in the front is 2 cameras. We fix it, that one. It's also in the plan view.
Yeah, but what does it cover?
It's cover in the outside is in the parking, in the front of the parking areas.
Yeah,
and
I do know the side. Yeah,
and the side of 2 cameras of the side and this side. So
you can see who comes in and goes out, and you can see who's right at the front of the shop.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Clive?
Yes, I've noticed that there's a number of the objectors refer to antisocial behaviour in the area, drinking on streets and people sitting on walls. I just wondered, in relation to the fact that you're seeking to have a licence till midnight, which is beyond that, I think, of similar premises. I mean, do you think that's going to have any adverse impact on antisocial behaviour in the area? I'm referring specifically there to the fact that you're going to be open. I think you said that other premises, I think, were closing around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, but you would be open beyond that time.
But I think you've got a fair amount of experience in dealing with this.
Yeah.
So
we can follow that in the conditions and everything. So should be we can. So we can follow that in the conditions and in the license condition and the training program and according to this one. So should be we can happy to work that one.
I think they're saying they're not going to sell street drinkers. Many of these people that are hanging around as street drinkers, aren't they? They're pretty easy to recognise, to be in my experience. They don't not difficult, as they just sit around drinking on the street. But if you see that, you're not going to, I think you're saying to me, you're not going to serve them if you see that sort of thing go on. A lot of shops and don't look beyond their door. And I've had a hearing from major supermarkets, they don't go outside, don't even look outside, not their responsibility, not safe. But there are ways of looking outside without actually putting yourself at danger when your staff come in, they're outside. When they go home, they're outside. They've got to come in, they've got to go home. And you've got the CCTV, you said, so you can see what's going on. But a lot of multiples say, well, it's not our responsibility. We don't go outside. It's too risky. But, you know, you do ask your staff who are coming in and you look outside and think you've got 2 cameras outside. Yeah, okay.
Okay. I'm conscious that I'm struggling a little bit to hear all the answers. So can I just remind you to speak very closely to the microphone? And that sort of moves me on to Philippa. Have you been listening and hearing all the questions and the answers at that point, Philippa?
Yes, I have. Yes.
And do you have any specific questions at all?
No, not really. It's the agent has answered all members' questions quite clearly. If there's any technical things they want to ask me, yeah, you know, I can certainly answer them. But no, I haven't got anything to add.
Okay. Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Robert. This would obviously be the section we would now move over to the objector. And obviously we aren't in that position. Sorry, is that?
Well, do I get to ask a question?
Well, if you just bear with me, I'm moving towards your presentation, David. So just bear with me. And okay, all right, okay. I was just reminded that you could have actually asked yourself a question, but I wondered whether you were going to hold back and then give a presentation which would perhaps include anything which would have been a question to the applicant.
Well, thanks, Chair. Well, I do want to make a short presentation, but if you could call it that, but I do have a specific question as well.
Well, and we would obviously grant that outside your 10-minute presentation. So go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, just you said that Premier is owned by Booker. Am I right in thinking Booker's owned by?
No, it's Premier is part of Booker.
Part of
You
Booker,
own the shop. It's
We
not-
are the owners shop.
What is
Sorry.
it? Is it a franchise? arrangement?
Franchise.
Sorry.
A franchise, but and then Tesco owns Booker. Is that right?
I think they do.
That's
Yeah.
Well, the only reason I'm asking, so would you think that it's possible, bearing in mind there's a Sainsbury's convenience store a very short walk from the site, that Tesco see this as a possible way to get a competitive edge over Sainsbury's, bearing in mind that your current application is to be open until midnight and Sainsbury's isn't? Is that possible?
I'm not sure.
Can I just interject and just remind you? I think it's more of I was giving you the opportunity to actually ask a question, but I think you're moving into what we might deem to be cross-examining the applicant,
okay.
which is not quite what we're here to do. We're here
Okay.
to actually ask specific questions. So if I can just say to you, David, I think your comment that you've just made then probably could well have been included in your presentation.
Okay.
But
Point taken, Chair.
Okay. So if we can then move on to your specific presentation.
Right. Thank you very much. Well, my main concern on behalf of residents is the late opening. Now, you've seen the objections, and I would confirm, having taken quite a lot of soundings in the area, that they're fairly representative of local residents. Not everyone objects. Some people think it would be quite nice to have a convenience store, although many say we don't really need it because we've got a co-op next door and a Sainsbury's, as I mentioned, just around the corner. But the coffee shop, well, that's not a licensing matter, unfortunately. I mean, if anything, it's a failing of the system that, for whatever reason, Quinton's or the agent or the landlord prefers to have a convenience store to say a coffee shop, which residents obviously would like, and one of them wants to run. But that one I don't think is relevant to this hearing. What is relevant, though, is the hours that the alcohol is proposed to be being sold. And I cannot see who is going to be using the store later than 10 o'clock. You've got a pub, as I mentioned, next door, which is open till 11. You want to stay open until midnight on Fridays and Saturdays. Who is actually going to be using your premises at that time, and for what purpose? You have to conclude it's people who've been drinking in the pub and want to drink a bit more, so pop next door to top up at the convenience store. And to my mind, it's all very well, and I completely accept the point that you've made about the training, and I accept that the CCTV and the training and the other conditions. But you know, it's 11:30 at night. The pub's emptied. There are people about who want to get more booze. I cannot see that that isn't potentially a problem that covers potentially all four of the issues that you're looking at as a licensing committee, namely prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, public nuisance, and protection of children from harm. There's already a certain amount of public nuisance from the existing premises. For example, residents complaining that they get people using their fence as a public toilet. I can't see that this is not going to make that situation potentially worse. And I would ask the committee to please consider what you're not going to make it a nice row of tea shops. Maybe that's not what we need. But if you look at the complaints, if you look at the fears of the residents, they're talking about the idea of people being able to get alcohol very late at night, later than anywhere else. All the competition, as we've heard, as I've just mentioned, 10 o'clock at Sainsbury's, 10 o'clock at the Co-op. It was 10 o'clock when there was a Thresher next door a few years ago. So there is a precedent for an off license in that row. It was a Thresher. It closed at 10. I do not get why you want to stay open beyond 10 and indeed beyond 11. And I do think that they raise those potential problems or exacerbating those problems. And it's summed up best by the resident who says, okay, it's not your responsibility or the responsibility of this committee, but we've got a fast food chicken shop there, chip shop, a betting shop, a vape shop. We've got the Co-op and we've got the gun pub, and just around the corners we've got a Sainsbury's. And one of these establishments will be offering cheap booze from 6 a.m. to midnight, which happens to be yours. And that's what I think gets to the nub of what they're objecting to. And that's why I think that I would ask the committee, if it's within your powers, even if you're minded to approve the application, and bearing in mind the previous premises sold alcohol, although only till 6 p.m. I can't see why you would be against it altogether. But I do think that the late night selling of alcohol is a potential problem. And I would ask you, if it's within your powers, to restrict those hours and certainly not go beyond 10. You can get alcohol at the Co-op at 10. You would be able to get alcohol at the Premier at 10, but you wouldn't be able to spend another 2 hours buying alcohol potentially to go across the road. Whether there's CCTV or not, you can just go across the road and sit around the memorial, particularly in the summer, in the lighter evenings, sit around the memorial getting drunk till midnight. I don't think, or beyond, if you're buying stuff at midnight. And you can understand why that should, in the heart of a residential area, why that should be a fear. There's nothing against you personally. I just completely take your integrity and the points you make about training and so forth. But this is a real concern to local people, and I think that the committee has an opportunity to just make certain further conditions here to assuage some of the worst fears of the residents, and particularly that issue about the late night drinking. That's all I want to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, David. It's now obviously over to us as members and the licensing officer and the applicant. I'm going to start with the applicant. Have you got any questions of the ward member? You will get that opportunity at the end of proceedings, yes. And so you haven't got any questions for okay, all right. Members?
Is it appropriate to ask another question of the applicant? No. Fine.
Right. I mean, I did have a question for you, David, but I think you made it abundantly clear, so I won't answer again. And that's regarding what you felt was appropriate time of closure, and I think you made that quite clear. So I won't ask that question again. Philippa, you've obviously, hopefully, heard all the presentation of the ward member. Do you have any questions to the ward member at all, or any comments to make on relationship to the presentation?
No, that's fine. It's they've all expressed their concerns. It's up to the applicant and it's up to members now what they decide. Okay, no, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, I now move over to the applicant, and this is your opportunity to address any comments that you feel appropriate to raise with us at this particular juncture before we come to the end of conclusion of the proceedings. Over to you, Robert.
Yeah, just to sum up, now the police have put some conditions on this licence. So they are of the opinion that if these conditions are complied with, then they must be complied with, of course, that this won't lead to any crime disorder in the area. Environmental health have not put any objections on the grounds of public nuisance. Most of what's been said, and we understand it, is speculation. It may happen, might happen, could happen. Will say in my, it's not my experience, but I think this urinating comes from people coming out of pubs and clubs more than anything else. But they are not. They're going to keep a close eye with their CCTV and not just stay in the shop all the time. They're not going to put themselves at risk, but they can have people coming in to report what's going on. People going if there's anything coming of that. A little bit disappointed about the cheap booze. I think we know where the cheap booze is coming from, and I think if you go to certain supermarkets, you'll see where the cheap booze is. This is an independent. You're not a part of a big group. You couldn't possibly sell cheap booze. I think we're not happy about that comment. Sorry, but cheap booze is 3 litre cheap cider that's available in some certain supermarkets. That's what I call cheap booze. I don't think we're looking at cheap booze. There's a whole section of alcohol. That's all, really. I'm not saying anymore. I'll keep quiet.
Okay, thanks very much. Did you hear that summing up okay, Philippa?
Sorry, yes, I did. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. And obviously, thanks for that summing up, Robert. We're now coming to the end of the proceedings, so can I formally thank everyone for their presentation and contributions. Members will now retire and to consider all the oral presentations given today, as well as the written ones which were already laid out in the agenda. A written decision notice will be issued to the interested parties, setting out the verdict as soon as possible, but in the event no later than 5 working days. So thank you all for coming today. I just await the confirmation that the Zoom host, the broadcast has ended.